emotion. All right. So just like our brain, our emotions are just as complex. Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of a review about the brain. And like I said, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's important that I review this. I promise I'm not going to bore you or anything like that. And I'm not going to get into the intricacies of the brain, but I want to talk about two areas specifically. Okay. So last time I talked about the amygdala, okay, and the prefrontal cortex. All right. So first, the amygdala is a part of our limbic system, and it's responsible for the response and how we experience emotion. Okay, that's the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex, okay, right here, covers our frontal lobe. That's responsible for executive functioning, okay, like decision making, okay, logic, and the ability to think about consequences prior to engaging in behavior. All right. So I want you to keep those two things in mind as I kind of talk about emotions tonight. All right. So remember the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And I want to start off by giving you an example of kind of how that works. Okay. So it is very common for people to say, you know, I don't want to feel this. This is too much to deal with. This is too hard. I don't want to deal with this emotion. I don't want to feel this. It's uncomfortable. Okay. And you yourself may have, experienced something like that. Okay. You say, I don't want to feel this emotion. Right. And it's understandable. But let me just give you a little example. Okay. If we didn't have access to emotions. All right. So let's just say, for example, you are in the woods, okay, and there's a bear charging at you. Okay. So remember I talked about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. How do you think you're going to feel when a bear is charging at you? You're going to feel a range of emotions: anxiety, fear, right? Oh, so many emotions going on at that time. A bear is charging at you, right? Well, you are going to feel the fear, okay, or the anxiety or whatever it is before you intellectually know what's going on. Okay, it takes a few seconds for the message to travel from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. Okay. So if this bear is charging at us, let's just say, okay, we didn't have access to anxiety or fear. Okay. It's going to take, like I said, it takes several seconds for that message to communicate to this part of your brain that something is wrong, that you're in danger. Well, if I didn't have access to that emotion, I would be Brother Bear's dinner tonight, right? Because I'd be standing there not knowing what to do. So that fear and that anxiety in that moment is communicating to me to run, get myself to safety, get away from this bear, do whatever it is that you need to do to keep yourself safe. Okay, that's what that emotion is there for in that moment. So again, imagine if you didn't have access to fear or anxiety, for example, right? We need emotion, as emotion communicates to us, okay? So that's nothing more about the brain. That's all I wanted to say about the brain. But I think, like I said, it's very important that we understand that relationship when it comes to emotion, okay? So the first thing tonight, naming emotion, okay? In order to accept, express, and cope with emotion, we must first be able to name it, okay? If I can't name it, I can't do any of these other things. Okay. So how many of you use those phrases that I mentioned earlier to say what it is that you're feeling? Okay, without actually using the term, I feel sad, or I feel anxious, or I feel frustrated. You just say, "Ugh, I'm in my feelings." What does that mean? What does that look like? It's important to be able to name what it is that you're feeling. And I know, being an adolescent or a teenager, it can be difficult to put a name to what it is that you're feeling, in fear of being judged or maybe looking weak by your peers. Okay. But there is a sense of freedom and ownership. Okay. When you're able to put a name to what it is that you're experiencing in that moment. Okay. You can think about it in this way. The inability to name your emotion and still trying to cope with it is like trying to figure out the answer on a multiple choice test with no questions. That's kind of impossible, right? So how do we do it? How do we put a name to what it is that we are feeling? Okay. I like to use it's a feelings wheel, and I'm pulling it up here on my phone. Okay. I know we all we all have access to our phone. It's always at arm's reach. So it's called feelingswheel.com. And I know it's a glare and you probably can't see it all that much, but here it is, just a feelings wheel. And it has all the different feelings that we experience. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will go through some. So you have anger, disgust, sadness, fear, happiness, disappointment, humiliation, anxiety, confusion, excitement, amazed, thankful, loving, caring, powerlessness, hopelessness, ashamed or shame, embarrassment. So it's a lot of different feelings on this wheel. And again, that's feelingswheel.com is where is what I'm looking at right now. So as you can see, we experience a variety of emotion. Okay. So it's as simple as that. If you don't know what it is that you're feeling, you can always use this chart and really just go through it and look at the different feelings and say, you know what, this is what I'm feeling right now. I feel sad. I feel embarrassed. I feel angry. I feel frustrated, right? Put a name to what it is that you're experiencing in that moment. Another reason it's important to name those emotions. Sometimes we carry emotions physically in our bodies. Okay. So, for instance, when I'm angry, I get a headache. When I'm anxious, my stomach gets like butterflies. It has this like butterfly kind of feeling. Okay. So when, when you are feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, I want you to remember that sometimes we can carry those emotions physically. Okay. And we have the control over dealing with those emotions and dealing with some of those symptoms that we may be experiencing in that moment. Okay. So that you don't feel so hopeless or powerless. All right. So that is naming emotion. A really easy tool to use is an I statement. Okay. I feel blank. Okay. I feel sad. when it rains outside. Okay, that's a very simple I statement. Okay, but it just gets you in the habit of naming your emotion. Okay, I feel blank when blank. So I feel sad when it rains outside. I feel anxious when I have to speak in front of a large crowd of people. Okay, putting a name to what it is that you're experiencing. All right. So once we name how we feel, we can then move into acceptance. Okay. And I know I've talked about acceptance the last couple of times I was here. And the same way I talked about it then is the same way I talk about it now. Um, the same strategies and tools that you use to accept circumstances that you don't necessarily like is the same way we accept emotions that are uncomfortable for us. Okay. So remember, acceptance does not mean that you like it, that you like that emotion, that it feels great. No. Okay. It just means that maybe I don't have control over what triggered this emotion for me. So, for example, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I know I keep saying this, but we don't have control over this pandemic. Now, this pandemic may trigger some anxiety. It may trigger some fear, some frustration, some anger, right? I don't have control over the pandemic, but I absolutely have control over how I experience whatever it is that I'm feeling, okay? So I can accept this emotion. I don't have control over the pandemic, but I do have control over how I experience this emotion during this pandemic. Okay. So many people think, and you might be one of these people, but many people think that feeling feelings makes the feeling worse. Okay. So if I acknowledge and feel this sadness, the sadness is just going to get worse than what it already is. And that's not the case, right? And so people who think this way often avoid, often avoid uncomfortable emotion. Okay. So now we're creating this really unhealthy relationship. Okay. So it's like, well, if I feel sadness, I'm going to avoid it in the hopes that it just goes away and just magically disappears and I won't feel it again. Okay. That's not the case. All right. It's almost like avoiding your parents telling you to do your chores, right? So I'm going to avoid my parents because I know they're trying to tell me to do my chores. Does that really stop your parents from not telling you to do your chores? Do you think avoiding them? No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way, right? Your parents come right back in your room and say, hey, go do your chores, right? And if I avoid this situation again, they're going to come back maybe a little stronger, right? I said, go do those chores, right? Our emotions are the same way. If we try to avoid them and hide from them, right? They come right back, and they come back in a more intense kind of way. Okay. So it's important to accept the emotion, and the acceptance, it may take some time, and that is okay. But you want to make sure that you give yourself permission to accept whatever it is that you are feeling in that moment. All right. So right now, again, in this pandemic, the way you learn is not in your control, right? So we have a lot of virtual learning right now. where you would probably prefer to be at school. Okay. And that might trigger some sadness, some anxiety, some frustration, even anger. But we don't have any control over that. We do, however, have control over how you experience that anger, how you experience that sadness, okay, or anxiety or frustration or whatever it is that you might be feeling in that moment. All right. So that brings me to my next point, which is express. Okay. So we've talked about naming the emotion. I feel blank when blank. Okay. Now, and then we talked about accepting that emotion and not avoiding it. Okay. To now expressing it. Okay. So I've named it, I've accepted it, and now I need to express it. So, how do you typically express your feelings? Or do you express your feelings? There are several ways for us to express our emotions in a healthy way. Okay. You can write about it. You can exercise. You can cry if you need to cry. And most importantly, you can talk about how you're feeling. Okay. You can talk to somebody that you trust, somebody that cares about you, who won't judge you. All right. That is always an option. All right. An important thing to remember is your feelings are your feelings. Okay. They are yours to have. Okay. Nobody can take your feelings away from you. Okay. But it's important to remember that the way we express or don't express our feelings has consequences. And remember, consequence is not a bad word. Consequence is just something that happens after we've made a decision to do something. Okay. So, for example, let's just say you are frustrated or angry, so much so that you punch a hole in the wall or slam a door or yell back or talk back to your parents. Now, in that moment, a lot of things are happening, but two things I want to point out. One, you're not acknowledging how you're feeling, right? If I just immediately start yelling back or slam doors, punch holes in walls, right? I'm not really acknowledging how I'm feeling. I'm not naming it, right? And then the other thing is my actions are definitely going to have consequences, and I'm probably going to get in trouble. If I punch a hole in the wall, if I yell back at my parents, if I slam doors, I'm getting in trouble. Okay. So it's important to acknowledge, name how it is that you're feeling. All right. And remember, we can feel all day long. Okay. If you remember nothing else tonight, I want you to remember feelings do not have consequence, or feelings don't have consequences. Actions do. Okay. So you can be angry. You have every right to feel anger. You have every right to feel hurt and pain and sadness and frustration, right? You have a right to those feelings because they're yours. They belong to you. But if I'm angry and I punch a guy or I punch a hole in the wall, right? That is going to have, my actions are going to have consequences. Okay. So if mom or dad takes your phone away or takes away the PlayStation or say, no, you can't hang with your friends, you can't talk to your friends, or I'm taking your allowance this week. They're not doing that because you're mad, right? they're doing that as punishment to a specific behavior, like punching or slamming or whatever it is that you do. Okay. And I'm not saying that everyone does this, but I do understand that we are human, and sometimes we feel ways and we just do without thinking first, right? I get that, but I want to make it very clear that, you know, your emotions are never the reason why you're being punished in some kind of way, but your actions, your behavior, right? That's the reason. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that I make that very explicitly clear. Okay. So that is expressed. So when you have these uncomfortable and strong emotions, make sure you're expressing them in a healthy way. You have that option to express whatever it is that you're feeling in a healthy and constructive, effective kind of way. All right. Okay. So, um, so naming and accepting and expressing how you feel, it can be draining. It can be exhausting, right? So it's important that once you've done all of that, you take care of yourself, right? You cope, and you cope, and I know I talk about this all the time, but self-care. Self-care is extremely important. Healthy self-care is always going to be the best care, okay, for you. You don't want to get into the habit of dealing with emotion in unhealthy ways, as that can lead to very, very serious issues. Okay. So I want to share with you, let me find those here. What happened to my cards? I think they fell when my laptop fell. Oh, here they go. Okay. So I want to share with you one of the ways that I teach clients of mine how to do all of this, right? Naming, accepting, expressing, and coping. Okay. So here you can get like just regular note cards. Okay. And on the back of the note card, I want you to write out an emotion. And this can be an emotion that you find yourself experiencing all the time and not really knowing what to do when you feel that way. Okay. So what you do is just write out the emotion on the back of the note card. Okay. And then on the flip side of the note card, you're going to write out several things that you can do when you feel sad. Okay. Or anxious or frustrated or scared or whatever it is. Okay. So you want to write the emotion on one side, and then on the other side, you want to list different things that you can do when you feel that way. I know a couple of weeks ago, I talked about different breathing techniques. All right. So let's just say you deal with anxiety a lot. So on a card, we're going to put anxious or anxiety. And then on the flip side, it can be some of those breathing techniques that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to do my belly breathing, or I'm going to do my nostril breathing, right? You want to, this is a way for you to kind of plan out what it is that you're going to do when you feel a type of way. Okay. So if it's anxiety, if it's sadness, if it's fear, if it's frustration or anger or whatever it is, you can create a separate card. All right. Create a separate card, and right on the flip side, write out some different things that you can do when you feel that way. All right. So just in conclusion, Emotions can be very complex, okay? And sometimes experiencing those emotions will be uncomfortable and it can be overwhelming, okay? I want you to remember that, not all emotion is supposed to feel good, okay? Not all emotion is supposed to feel good. Unfortunately, we don't address emotion enough just in society in general. And so when we feel uncomfortable, we tend to avoid it or run from it or hide from it. That's a very common thing. So, for example, okay, let's just say take sadness, all right? When a loved one or someone that you care about passes away, that is sad, all right? That is sad. And it's not supposed to feel good. It kind of sucks, actually, right? It's not the greatest feeling in the world. But it's important to remember, yes, it's sad. And yes, I can learn how to cope with it and manage through it and navigate my way through this emotion, right? It's important to remember that emotions are not permanent. You won't be sad forever. You won't be anxious forever. You won't be angry forever, right? Emotions are not permanent. They pass. Once we allow ourselves, like I said earlier, give yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment and know that you are capable of dealing with it, that emotion is going to eventually pass. It will go away, okay? Because emotions are not permanent. Now, does that mean, once I deal with this anger in regard to this particular situation, does that mean I'm never going to be angry again? No, you will be angry again. You will be frustrated again. You will be sad again. You will be anxious again. But that is okay because you know what you can do and that you are capable of dealing with that emotion, okay? So that's all I have for you guys tonight. So just to recap, we're going to name the emotion, okay? We're going to accept the emotion. We are going to express the emotion. And we are going to cope with it and include some self-care along with that coping, okay? So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. If you have any questions or you need more information or you just need somebody to talk to about how you're feeling, because I know we are in tough times right now, challenging times right now. So if you need someone to talk to, I am accepting new clients, and I have a plethora of other resources that I can give you as well if you need it, if you need someone to talk to. All right. So my first 4 sessions are always free. You can visit my website at www.momelo.co. So that's www.momelo.co. Okay. So I will see you again next month. And for the parents and the teachers, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks here at the end of October, okay? And we'll be talking about emotions as well, but just in a different kind of way, okay? So thank you again, and I will see you guys later. Bye.